A violent struggle had taken place inside her home, and then she was found in a culvert. But the question still remains, who did it? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Theresa Insana. Viewer discretion is advised. Quick before we get started, of course, hello, my name is Mike. If you're new to the channel, I tell 3 true crime stories every single week. Yeah, here on the YouTubles, I tell a story on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I also have been posting more like short form true crime stories here on YouTube, but I also post every day on TikTok at least once or twice a day. You can find the link to that in the description of this video below in the link tree. It also pops up here at some point in the beginning and at the end. Feel free to follow if you like. You don't have to, but you can. Also in that link tree, you're going to find my merch store where we sell t-shirts kind of like this. Yeah, what was a weird gunkly cough for, Mike? I don't know. T-shirts, hoodies, stuff like that. We do ship all over the entirety of this planet, this very, very flat and also octagonal planet. What? We do. Okay, we just do. And lastly, if there's a case you want me to cover, just email me. My email is listed in the description below as well. Just email me the name of the case, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to the list. I pick my cases that I cover every time at random. I will get to yours eventually. I just cannot tell you when exactly I'll get to it. Okay? Okay. Capiche. But let's get into today's story. It was the end of October 2004. Colleagues of Theresa Insana, who had worked together at the Rio Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, they had not seen or heard from Theresa in a couple of days, which for her is extremely unusual. Theresa she never missed work to begin with, and if she was ever going to, she would call. And she had never missed 2 days in a row. But that's exactly what happened here with no phone calls at all. No texts, no emails, nothing. She just didn't show up. So around October 28th or 29th of 2004, 2 of her colleagues would go to her home in Las Vegas, Nevada. The door was unlocked, and when they entered, they found what appeared to be something had happened there. There was some kind of struggle or altercation had taken place in the house. But Theresa was not in the house. Once these colleagues had noticed things appeared to be in kind of disarray, and they noticed like some blood spots, they called 911 to report what they had just found. So police arrive and they just sort of confirm what the friends also say, that something happened here. It's now considered an endangered person because Theresa isn't there and something happened here, so now where is she? They open up her garage and they actually see that her car is parked in the garage, so she wouldn't have gone anywhere without it. Now the blood spots that were noticed were actually very far and few between, but there were at least 2 or 3 blood spots in the house, primarily in the bathroom of her home. In the bathroom, they also noticed that the towel bar had been ripped off the wall. In the kitchen, there was a bunch of cleaning products on the counter. There was an opened box of trash bags, and it appeared that someone had recently used those cleaning supplies to do a lot of cleaning, especially in that bathroom. The bathroom, for the most part, other than the towel bar being removed, was pretty immaculate. It was pretty clean. But the person who cleaned did not get it all the way cleaned because there were those couple bloodstains. Now, the bloodstains would eventually be tested and run against Theresa's known DNA sample. It was not hers. And so it belonged to potentially our killer, maybe, or kidnapper, because we don't know where she is. Police and volunteers essentially are beginning to search for Theresa all over the area. And now this is obviously in Las Vegas. It's a much busier, high traffic type area, so it kind of makes searching a little bit more difficult, but it would only take a couple of days and they would find Theresa. It was November 1st, 2004. A couple of construction workers who were working on a new housing development there in Las Vegas, and this is about 7 to 10 miles or so away from Theresa's home. There is this kind of small bridge, but it's over this really long kind of drain or culvert. You know, one of those big culverts that you can actually like walk down. There was a rolled up carpet found underneath this culvert. And the culvert itself was really kind of clean. There wasn't really much trash or anything. And so it kind of stood out to them. When they inspected it, they noticed that there was something inside the carpet. It would eventually be revealed to be a body. And it was the body of a woman. Pretty soon after the discovery, the coroner would determine that this was the body of 26-year-old Theresa Insana. She had been strangled to death. And she had signs of blunt force trauma as well. Theresa Elizabeth Insana was born on January 20th, 1978, and she was born and raised in Niagara Falls, New York. She lived in Niagara Falls for a good chunk of her life, for the majority of her life, and she did have a sister. Her sister's name was Maribeth. The two of them were thick as thieves. They were like the best of friends. Maribeth was Theresa's younger sister by about 10 years, but she said that 10-year difference really seemed kind of meaningless because the two of them were just so close, and Maribeth would like follow Theresa around everywhere she went, and Theresa didn't mind. She loved it. She would let Maribeth hang out with her sometimes, like with her friends as they were growing up, and they were more than sisters. They were just really close friends. Theresa was known by her friends and family by the nickname Tree, and she was just someone who was always so like full of life and just always seemed to be happy and always seemed to be looking ahead to the future and never really so much dwelling on the past. She was really intelligent and she had a lot of aspirations in life. She would go to college where she would study in psychology, and that seemed to be kind of the path she wanted to eventually take. But it got to a point where she was not really content anymore in Niagara Falls. She wanted to do something different. She wanted to move somewhere else. And, you know, at one point she had taken a trip to Las Vegas and she kind of just instantly fell in love with it. The bright lights, the crazy atmosphere, all of it. And so she would eventually pick up and move to Las Vegas. Pretty early on, she would get a job at the Rio Hotel and Casino there in Vegas. And, her goal there was to sort of move her way up the ladder, so to speak, and earn more money and that kind of thing. And she did. She, pretty quickly, she moved up and up throughout the hotel. She started to date a man named Jeff Fenton. The two of them at first they had a really great relationship. Theresa described how much she loved Jeff, and eventually Jeff proposed and they were planning to get married. But then just a few weeks before the wedding, Jeff would end up breaking up with Theresa, just by stating that he just wasn't ready to get married. And Theresa was really obviously heartbroken by this. She had been really looking forward to this, and she thought that this was, the man of her life, her dreams. But it just wasn't meant to be, I guess, in the end. But she didn't, she was upset at first, but she was someone who always would even take, hard situations like that and always approach it with still a smile and a positive attitude. And she even remained friends for the most part with Jeff. I mean, the two of them were still close. The breakup happened in about 2002. So at this point, now in 2004, Theresa is living alone in her home. Her very good friend, her best friend actually, Grace from Niagara Falls, who the two of them, went to school together. Grace would come out to visit Theresa all the time in Vegas. And during one of the most recent trips, I think closer in 2004, Theresa told her friend something strange and honestly kind of creepy. She said she was noticing little things at her house. Like she would be watching TV in the morning on her favorite channel for the news or whatever. She would then leave the house, lock up, she would go to work, and then when she came home and she turned on the TV was suddenly on a completely different channel. It wasn't the channel she had left it on in the morning. She told her friend Grace that she had this uneasy feeling that someone may be going into her house when she's not there. This is 2004. This is before everybody on the planet had a camera in some way, shape, or form on their house or near their house. She didn't have any security cameras, and most of the homes in her neighborhood also didn't have security cameras. Again, well before its time. And she had not set up any security actual devices in her house, like a security alarm or anything. It's unsettling, I mean, to have that kind of thought and feeling that someone is in your house when you're not there, someone you don't know. That's disturbing. I would be terrified to come home to even something as subtle as a different channel being on. That would freak me out. But she kind of just sort of took it in stride and said, maybe I'm just losing it a little bit. Who knows? Maybe the stresses of work is getting to me. It was then October 26, 2004. That night, Theresa calls her mom to speak to her. She told her mom about her day. How Theresa had gotten up in the morning. She, walked her dog, her absolutely beloved dog, by the way. She adored her animal. And then she went to work. She came home, had dinner. She also voted that day. And it just seemed like a normal day. And Theresa had also called her friend Grace, but Grace, unfortunately, could not answer the phone at the time. And so Theresa left her a voicemail, kind of just saying, hey, how you doing? Here's how my day went, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you a call when you can. The voicemail was left at about approximately 6:30 p.m. on that October 26th day. And her friend Grace, to this day, she says she regrets never answering that call because she never spoke to her best friend ever again. Now, the phone call with her mom was also just around 6:30 p.m. Grace would then try calling Theresa back at approximately 7:30 p.m., but Theresa never answered the phone. The next morning, Theresa was expected at work at the Rio Hotel and Casino, but she didn't show up, which, like I said earlier, was not like her whatsoever. She would always show up to work, and she would, if she ever called out, which she never did, she would call, or she would text, or she would inform someone, but she didn't. And then the day after that, she didn't show up again. Something's weird here, something's unusual. And that's when a couple of her colleagues, including Jeff Fenton, who I guess still worked with her at the casino, the two of them went to the house, and then they made the discovery of it being kind of in disarray and something appeared to have happened. So that brings us back to this investigation where, police believe that there is a struggle had taken place in this house. Someone had attempted to clean up, but they missed a couple of blood spots. And then on November 1st, like I said earlier, Theresa's body was discovered underneath a culvert about 7 to 10 miles away from her home. She had been strangled to death, and she was bludgeoned a couple of times. The blood stains they found did not match Theresa, and they were so small that in 2004, they weren't able to really do much with it. They weren't able to, build this DNA profile. And so, unfortunately, they kind of just had to leave that DNA be for the time being. This appears that Theresa had gotten home and she was likely just kind of winding down when someone entered her home. They believe through the sliding glass door in the back. However, there weren't, to my knowledge, any fingerprints found. But they entered the home and then they just attacked her. The first person that they looked at was Jeff, the now ex-boyfriend, because it's, typically always someone that the victim knows, and a lot of times, most of the time, it turns out to be a boyfriend, a husband, an ex. They questioned him very thoroughly. They questioned people that he had provided as an alibi, and all of the people confirmed without a shadow of a doubt that Jeff could not have done this, and his alibi was confirmed. He was actually out at a car dealership with a friend where there were cameras. There were also the car salesman confirmed too. I saw him there during the time frame that this all would have happened, and so it could not have been him. Jeff was cleared as a suspect. Based on the evidence at the crime scene, it appears as if that Theresa was killed in her home. The person then took her body, and based on physical evidence in her car, she was placed into the trunk of her own vehicle. She was then driven about 7 to 10 miles away, where the person rolled her up in a carpet and just dumped her body underneath this culvert like she was just garbage. And then the killer drove her car back to her house, parked it in the garage, and then at that point likely went back inside to do what he thought was a thorough cleanup job. They did also find a blood drop on the bumper of her vehicle. And the vehicle seat was positioned farther back than Theresa would have been able to sit in and drive. So they know someone else was driving that car. But again, to my knowledge, There weren't any fingerprints. They questioned every single person in that neighborhood, especially her direct neighbors. They got nothing. There were no witnesses. Nobody saw or heard anything. No one heard a struggle. No one saw a struggle. No one heard screaming. Nobody saw this person entering the home. Nobody saw the person backing out of the garage and driving away, and nobody saw them coming back. And nobody saw them leaving the house and going into another car. It was as if a ghost did this, because there was just no signs or traces of who this person was. Grace would tell the police about this concern that Theresa had about potentially someone being in her home when she wasn't there. And that, she had this fear of that kind of thing happening. And, Grace suggested this could have possibly been a stalker. And just based on how casual the killer seemed to be with all of this, meaning just kind of walked into the house, killed her, put her into her own car, drove her, dumped her, came back, cleaned up. The person was comfortable, at least enough in this house, or comfortable enough knowing that she didn't really have many people in her life that would come check on her, that would interrupt him during this process. But who was that person? That's the issue. Nobody knew. She didn't have any enemies at work. She didn't have any other exes. She didn't piss anyone off that anyone was aware of. She was a very sweet woman. She didn't ruffle any feathers. She just did her thing. For the most part, she was someone who just she woke up, she went to work, came home, walked the dog, fed the dog, and went to bed, and then rinse and repeat. By the way, the dog was okay. The dog was at the house. The dog had not been fed in a couple of days, which that's another reason they knew something had happened to her, because she loved that dog, but he was okay. And so Theresa's case goes cold, and it goes cold for quite some time. And then finally, DNA technology, as we all know, has advanced over the years, and we get to 2017 now. They relook at Theresa's case, and they see, okay, we have these blood drops that were missed by the killer. They test them, and they confirm that they were not Theresa's blood, but it was the DNA of a male, of what they can now figure out. But DNA phenotyping had become a much bigger thing by 2017. And so using Parabon Nano Labs, a very popular lab for this kind of thing, this is the DNA thing they can do to create a genetic profile of the potential donor of the DNA, meaning they can tell you the sex of the offender, they can tell you their skin color, their ethnicity, where they're originally from, or their heritages, I should say, the hair color, eye color. It can basically draw a picture of this person. So they came up with two different profiles. One initially was just described more generically as a Southeast Asian man. But then after they did some more thorough digging into this, they determined that it was someone of Filipino descent. So they created these images, and they had plastered these images all over the news, hoping that somebody may just recognize this image, because these images are usually pretty darn accurate. They may not be 100%, but there have been some side-by-sides of the eventual perpetrator from these phenotyping DNA things, and they're damn close. And so this image may look a lot like the guy. And keep in mind, this would have been the image of him probably back in 2004. But the DNA they also had put into the system to see if it matched anyone, any known offenders, any previous, convicted felons, nothing. There was no match whatsoever. They gave this profile to people who were in Theresa's life back in 2004, and they didn't recognize the guy. It didn't come off as anyone they knew. This could have just been a complete stranger. The composite that they came up with indicated that the man at the time may have likely been about 25 years old. They had black hair, a fairly light brown skin complexion. They had black or brown eyes, and a relatively clean complexion, meaning no freckles or anything like that. And so police there in Vegas are hoping against all hope that somebody out there recognizes that description of a person, recognizes this image, and because they're still at a loss, despite having this kind of new breakthrough, they still don't know who did this to her. They know what happened, they don't know why it happened, and they don't know who did it. Just based on the fact that, this didn't match any person in her life that anyone knew about, and she didn't really have a lot of contact with many people other than like her coworkers. Most of her friends and family, or all of her friends and family, were in New York. So this wasn't someone directly connected to her. It could have been a stalker. It could have been someone who saw her at the hotel and began stalking her from there, followed her home, and then started, slowly breaking into her home and doing things inside of her house when she was at work. And God knows doing what in her house. And then eventually he got bold. Maybe he broke in with the intent to sexually assault her. I don't think there were any signs that she was sexually assaulted, but then something led to something where she was killed. Because why would a person just break in just to kill her? Like, especially if this was a stranger or if this was just a random person. What's the motive? What's the reason behind it? Nothing was stolen from what I can tell. I mean, is it possible that this was just a guy who just wanted to kill someone? Could be, it's possible, which makes them a very terrifying person because who knows what else they've done to someone else out there. But unfortunately, that's really the end of this. There is no conclusion, there's no answers. Nobody knows who this man is. There's no inkling as to who. They have no suspects, they have no persons of interest. They have nothing. They have his DNA to eventually link it to him once they find him, but it's a matter of finding him. And somebody somewhere out there knows the truth. And perhaps that someone is you. This did not happen that long ago. This guy is probably still very much alive and still out there roaming around. And it's important to catch him so that he cannot hurt anyone ever again. So if you have information, you can report your information anonymously. You do not have to say who you are. You just have to say what you know. So, if you have information about the murder of Theresa Insana in Las Vegas, Nevada, please contact the cold case team at 702-828-8973. If you know anything at all, the smallest details can break this case wide open, as they say. Anything at all. Please help Theresa and her family, her friends, her colleagues, this community. Please help her get the justice she rightfully deserves. But that is it for this case, True Crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. Like I said, please subscribe if you're into true crime. I tell 3 true crime stories a week. Please give this video a like so more people can potentially see it, because you never know. One person is all it takes to see this story and go, oh my God, I know what happened, or oh my God, I know who it was. You never know. Doesn't have to be my video, it could be anyone's video about this case. Just need one person to see this story. Follow me over on TikTok. I sell merch. All of that's linked in the link tree below. Recommend a case to my email. Just the name of the case, where it happened, when it happened. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, bop, boop, bop, 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 oop, bada boop, bop, boom, bop, bee, bop, boop, bop, bee. You don't know the words of that song. I don't know what happened there. I apologize. Hello. Nope, that's not goodbye. Have you ever yanked the poop out of a rhinoceros's butt and eaten it? I have. I probably shouldn't have admitted that. Oh, God bless it. Okay, I haven't done that. It's crazy. I don't have anything for you. So I don't have anything else for you. So stick around if you want to, but I ain't gonna be here. You know what I mean? Just sit there like a creeper. One day I will figure out how to say goodbye to you all, but that day is not today. Not today, Zerg, as it was once said in a film from a while ago. Okay! Shoot! Scatter. Get out of here. Get out! I'm sorry. Ow.